Part 56. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Bulletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 552. Seeing John Killen getting closer and closer, Chen Ling instantly felt her heartbeat suddenly intensify. She took a breath, feeling that it was difficult to get rid of this tension quickly. So, she lowered her head and took another bite of food. It's a skill passed down from our ancestors. When we're feeling nervous, we might as well go get something to eat. Or go to the toilet. Because our ancestors would choose relatively safe times and places when eating or going to the toilet. When you eat, your brain assumes that you are safe and helps you calm down your nervousness. If you are nervous when giving a speech in front of a crowd, performing a show, or participating in a major interview, you can chew a piece of gum to help relieve your mood. After taking a few bites, Chen Ling felt that her excitement and nervousness were completely relieved. So, when John Killen's eyes met hers in the air, she smiled at him very calmly. "Brother Kellen, you are not calm at all." Chen Ling noticed that at that moment, Brother Ian's pupils shook. But he had great self-control and quickly looked away. His expression was no different from before. Just the corners of his mouth were raised at an inconspicuous angle. "I just heard a few celebrities around me screaming and stamping their feet. He's looking at me, he's looking at me." It was clearly me he was looking at just now. "It's me." "Look at you." "It's possible," one woman said to another woman. Before the latter could be happy, she heard the former continue, "He must have been attracted by your extremely stiff nose." "Huh? You're not looking at me, are you looking at you? There are at least 5 layers of chest X-ray pads on your chest. You can't fake it anymore. Next to him, a muscular man who looked a bit like Thor said slowly in a low and magnetic voice, "No, I think he must be looking at me. I am willing to do anything for him." And another boy with a sharp face and peach blossom eyes, who looked like he had just grown up, said confidently, "No, you are wrong, he is looking at me. I am the 10,000 men killer." Chen Ling felt their voices passing through his ears lightly. She looked at John Killen unscrupulously. "Trace his outline with your eyes." John Killen turned his face again. The men and women around him all stopped talking. John Killen raised his feet and walked towards Chen Ling. Finally, I stood in front of her and asked in English, "This beautiful lady, what food are you enjoying? You look very good." Everyone looked at Chen Ling and then at John Killen with shocked eyes. Does he like this type of girl? Or is it that Chen Ling enjoys food differently and shows no fanaticism towards John Killen, but instead stimulates his desire to conquer? I wish I had known that I would also be eating from a plate. At this moment, Chen Ling was as shy as a little white rabbit. She faced the tall John Killen, her cheeks flushed instantly, and her wet eyes were full of surprise. "Huh?" John Killen reminded her in a monosyllabic voice. Just listen to her shy and timid answer to his question, "Dear Mr. Fang, I am eating cheese-baked snow crab legs. It is really delicious. Do you want to try it? I will get it for you." John Killen raised his lips and smiled lightly, "No need, don't you have some here? Feed me." Chen Ling waved her hands repeatedly and said hurriedly, "No, no, these have been stained with my saliva." "I said," John Killen lowered his voice and said in a threatening voice, "Feed me." Everyone looked at Chen Ling with envy and jealousy. Chen Ling looked panicked, looking around and muttering, "Where are the tableware? I'll find you a tableware. You can use your fingers." John Killen said. According to the script, Chen Ling is just a small star, and John Killen is the protagonist of the banquet. John Killen could ask her to do anything, and she couldn't refuse. Therefore, after Chen Ling was embarrassed for a while, he helplessly picked up the pink and white crab legs wrapped in cheese with his fingers and fed it to John Killen's mouth. John Killen's eyes were firmly locked on her face. like a hungry wolf eyeing a delicious rabbit. He took the snow crab legs into his mouth, and finally touched her fingers gently with his lips. Chen Ling thought, Brother Lan plays the role of a romantic and bad boy, it really looks like him. It looks so similar. I wonder if he has a criminal record, I'll give him a chance to cross-examine him. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Bulletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 553. After John Killen swallowed the food in his mouth, he made an invitation gesture with his left hand behind his back and his right hand, and said to Chen Ling, "Miss, would you please do me a favor and dance with me?" Chen Ling blushed and lowered her head slightly, whispering, I wish. The heartbreaking sounds of the people around him almost seemed to materialize. A waiter came forward to take Chen Ling's dinner plate. He held a rectangular metal plate in his right hand. On the plate was a rolled hand towel, soaked in warm lemon water, the temperature was just right. Chen Ling picked up the warm towel and wiped his fingers clean before placing his hand in John Killen's wide and warm palm. At this time, the band waiting aside played their instruments. The elegant and romantic waltz started playing. John Killen took Chen Ling's hand and led her to the dance floor. With a slight exertion, he pulled her in front of him, and placed his left hand on her back. Chen Ling was wearing a red fishtail dress today, with her entire back exposed. The two round and plump waists at the lower end of her back were clearly visible. John Killen's fingers lightly traced her back. Thin calloused rough fingers gently brushed the bare and smooth back. Both of them trembled slightly in their hearts. They looked at each other. The two played their roles conscientiously, hiding the excitement in their eyes. Smell each other's scent, listen to each other's heartbeat, and feel each other's temperature. They feel each other's love. No words needed. John Killen led the dance, holding her hand and dancing on the dance floor to the music. After a short section of music, people put down their wine glasses one after another, took the hands of their dancing partners, and stepped onto the dance floor to dance. John Killen and Chen Ling were in the middle of the dance floor, surrounded by other dancers. We cannot remain silent like this. So, Chen Ling gently squeezed John Killen's hand. John Killen understood. He put his head close to Chen Ling's ear and asked in a whisper, "What's your name?" "My English name is Orphana." Chen Ling said. "No, what's your real name?" John Killen interrupted her, "What country are you from?" Their voices were very low. But if people around you are serious, you can still hear it. "My name is Chen Ling, from China," Chen Ling said. "It's a very nice name." "I like it very much," John Killen said. Chen Ling pursed his lips and smiled. At this moment, Barty was not dancing. He stood outside the dance floor, in front of him stood a man dressed as a waiter. "Well, who is that woman?" Buddy asked the man casually, holding the red wine glass. The man handed over a document with both hands. Batty did not answer, but said lazily, "Just pick the key points and tell me." "Yes." "Then," the man said fluently. "This woman's name is Chen Ling. She is from China. She is a second-tier actress in China and the eldest daughter of the Chen Group, a medium-sized enterprise in China. She is 21 years old and has type B blood. My family status is not high. It seems that I am not taken seriously by my family. My grades in school are not good, and my reputation from teachers and classmates is average. Currently, there are only 2 famous variety shows, and the other works are not worth mentioning. But this year she participated in the filming of a TV series and played the heroine in it. However, the TV series has not been released yet. The Chinese social network has a lot of fans. It is said that this person is very good at managing fans." Barty raised his hand. The man immediately stopped talking. Barty squinted his eyes and looked at the 2 people dancing together on the dance floor. "Go and check whether Fang Wenjian and this woman have time and space intersected, As soon as possible. Yes. The man took the order and quietly left the venue. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Buletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 554. Batty's eyes followed the two people dancing to the music on the dance floor. Their dance steps were light and graceful, like two butterflies dancing in the flowers, and like two meteors flashing in the night sky. Sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes light, sometimes heavy. The whole world was spinning in their dance steps. As the leading man, his movements were precise and powerful, and every rotation and slide was just right and elegant. His eyes were always fixed on his female partner. So, Batty's sight shifted from the man to the woman. What a beautiful woman with oriental charm! Batty couldn't help but exclaimed. He always believed that only oriental women with black eyes and black hair could wear a red skirt to the extreme beauty. The girl on the dance floor had her shiny black hair tied up on her head, with a white jade hairpin inserted in it. In addition, she only wore a small ruby earring in her ear. There was no other decoration. In this way, people can better focus their attention on her face, and will not be distracted by the jewelry. Her eyes are like a deep lake, her face is charming and smart, and her skin is as delicate and flawless as milk. When she smiles, her whole face is glowing with dazzling light. Her decent red dress, with the passionate and energetic dance steps, spins like a blooming flower. What is even more fascinating is that this girl has a contradictory temperament. Passionate and shy, charming and simple. Such a ripe apple that looks innocent exudes fatal temptation, stimulating men's desire to protect and conquer. This Fang Wenjian has a good eye. Batty thought. He is lucky tonight. At this time, the doorman led two people in from the door. Batty noticed it out of the corner of his eye, and his eyes moved away from the two people on the dance floor and turned to look at the two people. It was Amos Joyce and his nephew, John Joyce. Although Batty disliked Amos very much, Amos was the governor of California after all. When it was time to give face, you still had to pretend. So Batty put down his glass, showed a very warm smile on his face, and greeted him. "Oh, my old friend." Batty shook Amos's hand vigorously, then he looked at John and asked. "This handsome and healthy guy must be your nephew, Mr. John." John smiled even more enthusiastically. He stepped forward to shake Batty's hand, and greeted him with a very respectful tone. "Hello, Mr. Batty, it's a great honor to meet you." That line of sight finally stopped paying attention to herself. As Batty looked away, Chen Ling breathed a sigh of relief. That man's eyes were very sharp. Why did he stop paying attention to herself? Chen Ling was a little curious. After a certain rotation, she quickly glanced in Batty's direction. Chen Ling's fingertips suddenly tightened. A familiar figure appeared in her vision. Her chest ached. Amos Joyce. It's been a long time since we last met, my adoptive father. I will never forget your kindness. The last time she met Amos, there was a huge bullet hole in her heart, and the instigator was Amos, whom she always respected as a father. Although her heart was shaken, Chen Ling's eyes did not show any abnormality. She looked away naturally as if she had never seen her murderous enemy. However, John Killen had been paying close attention to Chen Ling's every move. He did not miss the slight tightening of her fingertips for a moment. Did Batty do something to surprise Chen Ling? When he turned her around, he looked in Batty's direction. He saw Amos. He understood the reason for Chen Ling's abnormality. However, without his worry and reminder, Chen Ling did not look at Amos again. Her smile was still sweet and charming, and her demeanor was still charming. John Killen gently squeezed Chen Ling's hand. After the waltz ended, the band smoothly changed to a more cheerful waltz. John Killen took Cheng Ling's hand and left the dance floor. He led her to the direction of Barty and Amos. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Buletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 555. Amos and Barty were talking quickly in lowered voices. They also noticed John Killen leading his dance partner over. The two immediately stopped chatting and put on warm smiles on their faces. John Killen originally held Cheng Ling's hand with his left hand, but after walking out of the dance floor, he held her slender waist instead. "Dear Mr. Amos, thank you for coming. It is a great honor for me." John Killen first expressed his gratitude to Amos for coming. Amos smiled boldly, "It is my honor to befriend a talented person like you." The two looked at each other and smiled. John Killen then said to Barty, "My considerate friend, I'm sorry that I resisted your previous proposal to hold a ball. I want to thank you even more for arranging the banquet, especially for the beauty you invited. I love so much." In one sentence, he praised Buddy for organizing the banquet, and also explained that all the arrangements for the banquet were organized by Buddy. Even the beauties who enhanced the atmosphere were all found by Batty. Fang Wenji and all obeyed the arrangements. In this way, others' suspicion of Cheng Ling can be dispelled. Batty smiled heartily and said, "I didn't expect to be able to satisfy our picky Mr. Fang. It seems that my hard work was not in vain." John Killen took out a room card from the left breast pocket of his tuxedo and handed it to Cheng Ling. "Go to my room and wait for me. When a man wants to talk about something, his playmates cannot be present." Cheng Ling took the room card and said shyly, "Okay, sir, I'll wait for you." John Killen raised his hand and snapped his fingers at a waiter. The waiter immediately came over, bowed, and asked respectfully, "Dear Mr. Fang, is there anything I can do for you?" John Killen lowered his head and pecked Cheng Ling's lips without hesitation. Seeing that Cheng Ling blushed with embarrassment, he said to the waiter with satisfaction, "Please bring this lady to my room." "Okay, Mr. Fang." The waiter, Cheng Ling, bent down and extended his right hand as an invitation, and said, "Miss, please come with me." John Killen's fingers hooked the lower edge of the shoulder blades on Cheng Ling's back, retracted his hand, put his fingers under his nose and smelled, showing a satisfied smile. Cheng Ling walked gracefully toward the door of the venue, and John Killen turned her head. Barty and Amos both looked at him. But Amos' companion, the young man with blonde hair, stared in the direction of Cheng Ling and did not take his eyes back. John Killen showed an undisguised expression of displeasure and coughed lightly. "Amos, who is this strange gentleman?" Amos noticed John Killen's displeased expression and felt a little strange. He turned his face and realized that his nephew was also staring at Mr. Fang's female companion. "John," Amos called out in a low voice full of warning. Only then did John retract his gaze. Amos then introduced John Killen, who looked unhappy. "This is my nephew, John Joyce." "John, this is the respected Mr. Fang." John bowed immediately. "Dear Mr. Fang, it's a pleasure to meet you, and it's a great honor to be a guest at your party." Amos looked at his nephew, and a suspicion flashed in his heart. "Isn't John gay? Why are you interested in women again? John is a huge pervert." He was really fascinated by Cheng Ling just now. At this time, he saw his uncle and the protagonist of the banquet, Fang Wenjian, glaring at him, and he felt panicked. He especially couldn't let his uncle Amos know about his sexual preference for both men and women. Because Amos had recently discovered some clues, and he was wondering if his wife was having an affair with another man. But after repeated searches, no suspicious person could be found. It would be very dangerous if one's sexual orientation was exposed at this time. Because Amos's wife has always maintained a friendly and close relationship with him. Even the child in her belly was John's own. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Bulletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 556. John Killen ignored his self-introduction and apology. John, who was bent over, was thinking rapidly. John is not a complete waste, at least, he has excellent psychological quality, after all, his uncle's wife dares to play with her belly. Therefore, after the moment of panic, he quickly regained his composure and explained. Sorry, I lost my temper. Recently I was looking for a spokesperson for our family's luxury women's clothing brand. However, I searched for a long time and couldn't find a suitable candidate. Until I just met your dance partner, she was so perfect and charming. It was the feeling I had been looking for. I lost my temper when I was excited, I'm really sorry. John Killen said nothing. Apparently John's excuse and apology were not accepted. Coveting his own woman in front of him, the more distinguished a man is, the less he can bear this. Barty is a man too. He understands. At this moment, Barty's heart was filled with contempt for John. There are really no rules. But Batty is the host of the banquet and cannot let the protagonist and the guests get into trouble, so he stepped in to smooth things over. Hey, Mr. Fang, John is still young and ignorant, so don't argue with him. John Killen sneered, he is still young? Mr. Batty, 3 years old is young, 5 years old is still young, but this Mr. John, I think he is several years older than me, right? Batty smiled stiffly, you are smart, I can't compare with you. After all, he is a student who has just graduated a few years ago, and he doesn't know much about social systems and rules. John knew that if he didn't come up with a particularly good argument today, he might not be able to get through. John wanted to join the Freemasonry, he was unwilling and unable to offend any of the senior members of the Freemasonry. Today's banquet was brought to him by Amos after he begged him for a long time. He could not offend the senior members of the Freemasonry before he even touched the door of the Freemasonry. So, John gritted his teeth and interrupted Buddy. He said, Mr. Fang, I am indeed attracted by the appearance of your female companion, but please don't worry, I am not interested in women. I am a gay. 100% pure. When John Killen heard this, his tense and serious face relaxed. He looked at John and then at Amos, as if to confirm the authenticity of John is gay. Amos shrugged, slightly embarrassed. John Killen then put on a smile, stretched out his right hand, and shook John's hand slightly. Oh, that's it? Welcome to my banquet, from today on, you are my friend. As a friend, I have to remind you that on high-level occasions, you should pay attention to your every move and never embarrass your uncle. If you meet someone with a bad temper who doesn't bother to listen to your explanation, you'll be in trouble. Do you think so, Amos? John Killen asked Amos. Amos and John were both a little unhappy. But John was at fault first, and they were unhappy, so they could only endure it. What Mr. Fang said is that Mr. Fang is generous. Amos scolded John, why don't you thank Mr. Fang for your consideration? Thank you Mr. Fang for your teaching, John said. Only then did John Killen withdraw his hand. In Amos's heart, he did not dispel his doubts about John. John Killen didn't care anymore. He looked around the venue for a while, but didn't see the person he wanted to see. He asked Barty, old man, where are our other friends? For senior members to join the union, at least 7 or more senior members of the union must be present. This is the rule. Barty understood, Mr. Fang, you are in a hurry to complete your oath of membership so that you can accompany your little beauty, right? John Killen showed a smile that said, you understand me very well. Batty patted John Killen on the shoulder and said, 3 of them are drinking in the bar on the 2nd underground floor, and 2 more are on the road. After everyone arrives, we will go to the temple together to preside over the oath of initiation ceremony for you. Okay, John Killen shrugged, let's go to the bar for a drink too. No problem, Barty turned to leave. But Amos stopped them, wait, you two go over first, I have something to explain to John. John was not a Mason. If John were there, there would be no way for them to talk about things that only Masons could know. Well, hurry up, John Killen said, and then he added, the misunderstanding has been resolved. Come to the banquet, be happy, and don't lecture your nephew again. Amos nodded, thank you, Mr. Fang. Just a few simple words, and I will come over to you to taste the wine soon. So, Betty and John Killen turned around and left through the door at the back of the venue. Seeing the two figures disappearing at the gate, Amos pulled John aside. What's wrong, Uncle? Why do you look unhappy? John knew exactly what Amos wanted to ask him. But he pretended not to know. Amos said unhappily, I know you are not looking for a spokesperson. Do you know that you look like you are coveting his female companion? It was my fault, John admitted his mistake honestly. But Amos didn't let him go. Then tell me, why are you staring at his female companion? John said in embarrassment, Uncle Amos, I really can't tell you the real reason. Amos looked at John with some suspicion. You know, I treat you as my own son and have never hidden anything from you. What is inconvenient for you to tell me? John sighed, his expression became solemn. Uncle, when I saw that woman, I thought of someone. Someone who made you unhappy. What kind of person can make me unhappy? Amos suddenly stopped talking. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Bulletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 557. A trace of unspeakable pain flashed across Amos's face. Chen Ling, his deceased adopted daughter, is his lingering nightmare. Before meeting Dr. Ken, Amos was very afraid of the coming of the night, because as soon as he fell asleep, Chen Ling would come to him and torture him, and he couldn't wake up. Amos's hands were stained with the blood of innocent people in his life. He has never had a nightmare. He has never been afraid. Chen Ling is the first one. John saw that Amos's face had turned darker with the naked eye, and secretly breathed a sigh of relief. It seems that he has temporarily gotten rid of suspicion. However, he can't let down his guard. Recently, he must find an opportunity to talk to Marlene Taylor, and he must keep a distance, and never let Amos suspect him. The cheerful waltz continued. But Amos remained silent. John coughed lightly and broke the silence. You know, I don't like women with black eyes. Some people say that women with black eyes were messengers of hell in their previous lives. Shut up. Amos suddenly roared, and the veins on his forehead bulged. His roar immediately attracted the attention of the people around him. People inside and outside the dance floor cast curious glances at the corner where the two of them stood. Amos raised his hand and adjusted his collar a little irritably, but he became more and more irritated. Finally, he simply unbuttoned the top button so that he could breathe more freely. John quickly apologized. I'm sorry, Uncle, I didn't mean to mention her. Only the people closest to Amos knew about Amos' nightmare, including his little wife Marlene Taylor, the housekeeper, Dr. Ken, and John. But everyone kept silent about it. After all, being scared by a dead person and having nightmares every night is not a glorious thing to tell others. He was also afraid that people would mention it repeatedly in front of Amos, making it more difficult for him to let go of his knot. When people withdrew their curious gazes, John spoke again to remind them. Uncle Amos, can you not let Mr. Fang and the others wait too long? Everything today is my fault, I hope it won't affect your mood. By the way, I still have to meet with the guys from the Masonic Society and witness the black-eyed man's oath of membership. Chen Ling, Chen Ling, Chen Ling. The more Amos told himself not to think about these two words, the more they kept echoing in his ears as if they were possessed by something. Chen Ling, Chen Ling. A girl not far away laughed out loud. Amos shuddered all over, and then cast a fearful look in the direction of the laughter. It was a blonde girl, not Chen Ling. But after seeing the woman's appearance clearly, Amos did not relax. A voice in his heart told him, Chen Ling's lingering ghost was near him, spying, waiting, and waiting for an opportunity to take revenge. Amos' forehead was covered with sweat. "Uncle, you don't look very well. Are you feeling unwell?" John asked with concern. John's voice brought back his sanity. Amos held his fist against his mouth and coughed to cover up his loss of composure. "I'm fine. I should go find them." "Go dancing by yourself." "Okay, Uncle," John answered respectfully, and then lowered his voice. "You have the medicine prescribed by Dr. Ken, right? If you feel uncomfortable, you can take one to relieve it." "I'm fine, okay, I'm leaving. I'll come to you when I'm done, don't go too far," Amos said. Amos forced himself to regain his normal demeanor, slightly adjusted his coat unnaturally, then raised his hand and patted John on the shoulder, and then turned and left. Seeing Amos leaving, John curled his lips and showed a contemptuous smile. It was just a dead woman who scared him like this. It seems that Amos is really going downhill. The day when I replace him and become the leader of the Joyce family is just around the corner. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Buletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 558. The bar was playing playful jazz, and the magnetic voice of a female singer echoed in the bar. Including the bartender, there were only 6 people in the bar. John Killen, Buddy, and 3 other old members of the United Freemasonry were sitting around the bar in the underground bar, drinking strong whiskey in high spirits. The ice ball is in the glass and makes a crisp sound. They were laughing heartily when Amos came in. "Come on, old friend, you are finally here. You missed a very interesting golf joke." As soon as Barty saw Amos coming in, he stood up and pulled Amos over and asked him to sit next to him. And asked, "What do you want to drink?" "Strong whiskey," Amos said. John Killen held the wine glass and glanced at Amos. He didn't look good. Did something unpleasant happen with his nephew John just now? After Amos sat down, Barty gestured to the dark-skinned bartender standing behind the bar. The bartender nodded and made a mute gesture of Roger. "Wait a minute, the only bartender in this bar is a deaf-mute. Born deaf-mute. I can't read lips either." The bartender bent down and took out a polished glass from the cabinet. He used a tongue to pick up a spherical ice cube from the ice bucket and put it into the glass. After pouring whiskey into it, he handed it to Amos. Amos took it and drank it in one gulp. Barty's hand, which was about to clink glasses with him, froze in mid-air. Barty was a little suspicious. What happened to Amos? Even if John did something inappropriate, Amos wouldn't have such a big reaction, right? By the way, Amos has been acting strangely recently. First, there was the scandal of assassinating a reporter. Although it was settled, the approval rate dropped a lot. Then, I heard that he was not in good health, saying that he was suffering from mental illness caused by high work pressure. It seems that the senior members of the Unionist Association are about to welcome new blood. Only then did Amos see the wine glass that Barty was holding, and immediately realized what had happened. He quickly apologized. "Sorry Barty, I was a little thirsty just now." "You drank too fast, old man. At our age, we should pay more attention to our health." Yes, Amos nodded, raised his hand to the bartender, and pointed to his glass, signaling the bartender to pour him a drink. After the bartender poured the wine, Amos held the wine glass and touched it with several people. This time, he just touched his lips. After a glass of hot whiskey, he felt bolder. "I'm just having a paranoid attack. Chen Ling is dead. She has turned into a corpse, lying coldly in the cemetery, rotting all over and covered with maggots. It is impossible for her to cause trouble for her anymore. Barty beside him started chatting with several others again. Amos pretended to listen carefully to what they were saying, but in fact he didn't listen to the specific content of their conversation. Just topics like international situation, financial crisis, real estate bubble, actresses' butt and breasts. He was trying to comfort himself. Don't be afraid. Do not be afraid. Don't take medicine as soon as you have an attack. Dr. Ken said that if you take tranquilizers regularly, you will develop dependence and drug resistance. Chen Ling is just a tool. She wanted to leave him, so it was reasonable for him to kill her. I also found an exorcist and performed an exorcism on Chen Ling's cemetery. Moreover, the exorcist told himself not to think about her anymore. That was another form of calling her. He will never hear the name Chen Ling again in his life. At this moment, he heard Batty next to him smile and say, "Her name is Chen Ling? It's hard to pronounce, but the English name sounds better dash." Bang! Amos' wine glass fell to the carpet. The amber wine spilled all over the floor. The wine glass and the ice cubes rolled away very far. The soul travels through the 18th line. The female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Buletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 559. Oh, God, Amos, what's wrong with you? Barty was startled. John Killen and the other 3 members also looked at Amos in shock. Unexpectedly, Amos's appearance at this moment was even more terrifying. His face was gray, his eyes were slightly bulging, and his pale lips were trembling violently. He seemed to be trying to say something, but failed. John Killen walked down from his seat, grabbed Amos's arm slightly to prevent Amos from slipping from his seat, and asked with concern, "Mr. Amos, are you okay? Do you want me to call you, doctor?" Amos opened his mouth, and a vague sound came from his throat. The bartender took a bottle of smelling salts from the bar and handed it over. Barty took the smelling salts, opened the bottle, and put it under Amos's hooked nose. The spicy smell instantly flowed down the nose and rushed into the chest. Amos's eyes were filled with physiological tears, but he had recovered from the previous state. Cough, I'm fine." Amos coughed violently and took a few deep breaths. A thought flashed through the minds of everyone present. The rumors were true. It seems that Amos is really old. Sick. Only John Killen understood. Amos was frightened like this because he heard Chen Ling's name. "It's better to go see a doctor. Your health is urgent, Mr. Amos," John Killen said seriously. "Yes, do you have any underlying disease? Do you need to take some medicine? There is a doctor in the White Club. I can ask the attendant to take you there." "No need," Amos raised his voice. "If he goes to see a doctor today, he will be impeached by his political opponents tomorrow, and he may be kicked out of the governor's office if he is not satisfied with his term. I've just been too tired these past few days, haven't had a good rest, and haven't eaten much, so I'm suffering from low blood sugar," Amos explained. "This is my poor hospitality," Batty said. He immediately picked up the phone from the bar and dialed a few numbers. After someone picked up the phone, he said, "I'm at the bar, bring us some food down." Then he made a few gestures to the bartender. The bartender nodded, bent down and opened the cabinet below, took out a few boxes of exquisite unopened dried fruits, and took out a few clean small plates. He poured the dried fruits into categories on the plates, and then placed the plates on the bar. Amos said gratefully, "Thank you, my Barty." He picked up a few dried fruits, put them in his mouth, and chewed them. The bartender came out of the bar and wiped the wine on the carpet with a rag. Fortunately, there was a blanket on the floor and the wine glass was not broken. The bartender picked up the wine glass and ice cubes and threw them into the trash can. The previous topic is temporarily suspended. Amos was unwell, so it was obviously inappropriate for them to talk and laugh. It was Amos who took the initiative and said, "Did I disappoint everyone? I'm fine. You can continue talking." Barty frowned and carefully observed Amos's face to see if he was forcing himself. Amos's face regained some color, and he indeed looked as if nothing was wrong. "So," Barty said, "old man, don't force it, tell me if you have anything." "Okay." Amos pinched the dried fruit. He pinched the dried fruit and felt anxious. Was the name Buddy just said Chengling? Well done. Why did you mention Chengling? Amos didn't dare to be distracted in the slightest, and listened to their conversation with full concentration. But this time, their topic revolved around the recent stock market shock on Wall Street. Amos listened for a while, but didn't hear any words related to Chengling. Could it be that I heard it wrong? Did he mention something related to Chengling? Chengling. This pronunciation has almost no similar words in English. But he must not take the initiative to mention the word Chengling. That way, others will know the reason for his gaffe. He also wanted to explain why he was interested in the word Chengling. These cunning foxes from the United Economic Society immediately knew what they were afraid of. They will secretly laugh at themselves for being weak chickens without eggs. Amos gritted his teeth. Amos didn't hear the name that frightened him again until all the members arrived and they left the bar to go to the temple. Asterisk. The temple is located at the innermost side of Whitehall. They walked out of the house where the banquet hall was located and walked deeper inside along the path. It was getting late and the stars were clearly visible in the sky. Everyone stopped talking and walked towards the temple in silence. The sound of their leather shoes on the marble and each other's breathing were very clear. Among the many breathing sounds, John Killen could distinguish Amos's breathing, which was getting heavier and heavier. On both sides of the path are large trees more than 10 meters high, standing in shadow, and the north wind is blowing, making a rustling sound. Is Amos' heart disease so serious? John Killen thought. At this time, the path came to an end, and the vision suddenly opened up. In front of him was a large piece of soft grass. A church with a very classical architectural style, red roof, white doors, and stained glass stood in the center of the grass. When John Killen heard this, Amos, who was walking in front of him, breathed a sigh of relief. It's so far away from the hustle and bustle that you can't even hear the whistle. It is hard to imagine that in the bustling and most expensive neighborhood of Los Angeles, there is such a quiet place. Their footsteps startled a dozen crows roosting on the top of the church. The crows made dissatisfied cawing sounds and rushed into the sky. Amos took a step back in fear and stepped on John Killen's foot. Amos didn't notice that he was terrified. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Bulletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 560. Countless candles were lit inside the church, like a pair of eyes, staring at the people who walked into the church. Batty took the lead and pushed open the white door and stepped in. Amos followed behind Batty, his face was ashen, like a frightened bird. John Killen followed closely behind, his expression calm and composed. The other 5 old members behind him walked into the church with solemn faces and lowered eyes. John Killen looked up at the church. It is a magnificent building. The church is more than 8 meters high, very magnificent, but it gives people a feeling of being squeezed. There are candlesticks hanging on the top of the church that can accommodate dozens of candles. At this moment, all the candles are lit, making the church very bright. The candlesticks are made of glittering gold and inlaid with valuable jewels. There is a fine velvet handmade carpet under the feet, which is soft and quiet when stepped on. The church is divided into 2 by 2 rows of seats. There are many seats, and at a glance, it can accommodate nearly 100 believers. On both sides of the church, there are many white marble pillars that serve as support, and the pillars are decorated with gold-painted decorations. Next to each pillar, a tall, polished armor is placed against the wall. There are 8 large pillars on each side of the church, and a total of 16 on both sides, which means 16 sets of armor. On the innermost side, there is a red hand-crocheted tapestry with exquisite gold thread sewn on it. This church has a unique atmosphere that makes people feel depressed and heavy. A group of 8 people walked in silently along one wall. John Killen looked around with some curiosity. There are many exquisite oil paintings hanging on the wall, not the common Christian oil paintings, but the development history of the Masons, how the compass shape of the first generation of the emblem has evolved step by step into what it is today, as well as the Masons' level icons, and some oil paintings of the Masons' successful reversal of the World War situation. Under the illumination of the candle from bottom to top, the expressions of the people in the oil painting looked extremely hideous. On the other side of the wall, John Killen looked at the opposite wall, on which hung life-size photo frames. The people in the photo frames were all half-length photos from the front. They were photos of successive Masons. Under each photo, their birth and death dates, as well as the specific date when they became Masons presidents, were marked. There were 10 in a row, and there were already 3 rows from top to bottom. Most of the first row were oil paintings. The photos below were taken by real cameras. The photos went from blurry black and white to clear colors. John Killen was very surprised and immediately squinted his eyes and looked at the last row, which was the 3rd row. The 3rd row was not full, and the newest one was a photo of the current Masons president, Andrew. Masons' information was strictly confidential. The adult photo of Andrew Miller, the president of the Masons, could not be found no matter how hard John Killen and the advanced team tried. They only found 6 photos of Andrew in his infancy, childhood, and adolescence, and none of them were clear. John Killen saw the person in the frame clearly. It was a man with sinister eyes and a pale face. His lips were very red, his nose was high, his beard was sparse, and his Adam's apple was not very obvious. At this glance, John Killen confirmed his previous guess. The current president of the Masonic Order, Andrew, was not the real Andrew, but his twin girl, Angel. Angel had undergone sex change and replaced him. John Killen only took a glance, then looked away and followed the others in. At this time, someone's cufflinks accidentally touched the back of the seat, making a ding sound. Amos trembled violently like a frightened bird. Then, he stared with red eyes, full of fear, and quickly patrolled the church, but after a few seconds, he retracted his sight. This man who was once like a lion, now looks like an ordinary old man who is old and weak. Long-term use of tranquilizers, sleeping pills, and great mental pressure have completely destroyed his health. He could hear Amos's breathing in front of him, which was tight and slow, very abnormal. John Killen listened to Amos's breathing, and suddenly, his heart beat heavily. John Killen held his breath so that he could hear more clearly. He turned his face slightly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He was counting the number of breaths. There were 8 people in their group, and there were 8 breaths. However, John Killen just held his breath completely. So, there should be only 7 breaths. Whose extra breath belonged to? John Killen abandoned all distractions and carefully distinguished, excluding the crows outside, the sound of flapping wings, the sound of wind, the rustling of leaves, and the footsteps of people. The remaining breath came from a certain armor on a pillar in front. Someone was hiding in the armor, spying on them. The soul travels through the 18th line, the female agent is killing crazy in the entertainment. Author, Bulletin Yehoyun Li. Chapter 561. They walked to the oath-taking stage in front and stood still. Barty also put away his usual playful smile and looked solemn. On the red silk on the oath table, there is a scepter used for the initiation ceremony, made of pure gold and engraved with patterns. There is a huge sapphire on the top of the scepter, and a gold chalice filled with pure holy water. A pair of exquisite white gloves. Barty picked up the pair of white gloves and carefully put the gloves on his hands. Then he took up the Holy Grail in one hand and the scepter in the other. Barty waved his scepter and said in a long tone, "The initiation, the ceremony officially begins." The 7 people in the audience lowered their heads. Then, Barty raised his right hand, pointed the scepter in his hand at John Killen's nose, then tapped somewhere on the carpet, and said, "Fang Wenjian, kneel down." John Killen took a step forward, walked to the place pointed by Barty, and knelt on the carpet obediently. He crossed his arms over his chest and lowered his head. The other 6 people surrounded John Killen in the middle. John Killen noticed that he was kneeling in the middle of a 6-pointed star. The other 6 people stood at the sharp corners of the hexagram. When everyone was in place, Barty swung his staff and shouted majestically, "Trample." I saw the 6 people raising their feet at the same time and kicking John Killen, who was kneeling on the ground. In the Freemasonry, whether you are a senior member or a junior member, the first step in the initiation ceremony is humiliation and trampling. The difference is that senior members get better treatment, which means they get a few kicks. The humiliation of lower-level members is even more humiliating: spitting, slapping, and stripping off their clothes. It is to let the new members be trampled on and humiliated. Each of these 6 people kicked them and then withdrew their kicks. And, although they looked like they were kicking fiercely, it didn't hurt when their feet landed on them. It can be seen that they are holding back their strength. After all, they are all colleagues from now on, and no one wants to offend others. John Killen didn't care. While kneeling, he tried hard to listen to the breathing of the person hiding in the armor. The man's breathing had been very steady. Who is he? Do Barty and the others know about this person's existence? Those who can enter the temple must not be ordinary people. Maybe they are high-ranking and powerful beings in the Heji Association, and John Killen is willing to bet that before they arrive at the temple, someone must have thoroughly searched the place, and they will never let outsiders in. Sneak in. John Killen recalled that Chen Ling once told him that he could roughly judge the gender of the other person by listening to his breathing. Generally speaking, women take 2 to 5 more breaths per minute than men. John Killen wears a watch and can tell the time. Barty nodded with satisfaction and said with sincerity, "Since our establishment, our United Freemasonry has been misunderstood by outsiders, and even abused and insulted by them." While he was delivering a long speech, John Killen had been carefully counting the breaths in the armor. The armor this man was hiding in was very close to them, and John Killen could now easily distinguish the sound of his breathing. Because the armor and helmet were tightly closed, the man's breathing echoed. John Killen pinched him for a full minute, and the man breathed 21 times. Is it a woman? Or a man with a smaller lung capacity? John Killen speculated. At this time, Barty had finished his speech. He soaked the gem of the scepter in the Holy Grail, sprinkled the water on John Killen's body. "Purify. The Freemasonry will wash away your stigma and wash away the dust on your body. No matter what kind of quagmire you have struggled in, no matter what kind of insult you have been subjected to, we can purify it for you. You will pure as the son of earth." Then, Barty waved his scepter vigorously again and ordered, "Hug." The 6 of them took a step forward, pulled John Killen up from the ground, hugged him one by one, and patted his back, as close as brothers. Barty said in a powerful voice, "And, we have Masonic brothers. They will give us endless support and encouragement, comfort, and help. We are not alone. We are a family." After the hug ended, the 6 people each stood back to their respective positions and stood still. John Killen, who was pulled up from the ground by them, stood among the 6 people and looked at Barty. Barty looked back at John Killen's eyes and asked kindly, "Fang Wenjian, who is standing below, are you willing to join our big family of the United Society?" "I do." John Killen put his right hand on his chest and paused. Batty said, "Then please say your oath." John Killen kept stroking his chest with his right hand and said word by word. "I, Fang Wenjian, voluntarily join the Union and solemnly swear that I will strictly abide by all the charters and regulations of the Union, fulfill my responsibilities and obligations, and conscientiously complete the work assigned to me by the Union. To contribute to the development of the Union, I am willing to contribute my strength, my connections, my wealth, and my knowledge to the Union. Members of the Freemasonry will always be my family. Mutual help, mutual benefit, control, subversion. I will be with the Masons. Forever."